What the Ukraine war exposed about China's military weaknesses. DefenseScope. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine, initiated in February 2022, has served as an unforgiving crucible, testing the doctrines, technologies, logistical capacities of modern militaries. While centered in Eastern Europe, its reverberations are global, offering hard-won lessons for planners worldwide. For the People's Republic of China and its rapidly modernizing PLA, the conflict is a critical, if indirect, case study. This piece will dissect key lessons from Ukraine relevant to China's armed forces. The lessons span every domain of warfare, strategic, tactical, and ignoring them would be a grave oversight. The parallels warrant deep analysis. Russia and China have invested heavily in modernization, often showcasing hardware in choreographed parades. Displays of power, hypersonic missiles, fifth-generation fighters, advanced naval vessels. But Ukraine shows a chasm between paper capability and performance under sustained combat. The PLA, without large-scale combat since 1979, must treat Russia's experience as a cautionary tale, where untested assumptions are exposed. Examining these through Ukraine's events yields a nuanced view of hidden flaws and risks in China's military. The lessons are not theoretical. They're written in wrecked tanks, lost ships, and grim statistics. One of the most profound lessons from the war in Ukraine is the critical distinction between parade ground prowess and battlefield performance. China, much like pre-invasion Russia, has curated an impressive public image of its military might. Chengdu J-20 Mighty Dragon Stealth Fighter, Type 055, Renhai-class guided missile destroyer, ballistic missiles cruise missiles. These weapons are, by all technical accounts, sophisticated and formidable. However, the vast majority of this high-tech inventory has never been subjected to the true test of high-intensity combat. A controlled test on a weapons range where conditions are optimal and variables are limited is fundamentally different from a live battlefield saturated with electronic warfare, enemy fire, and the unpredictable chaos of human factors. Russia's experience provides a stark warning in this regard. Many of its advanced systems, touted as world-beating, demonstrated mixed or even poor performance. Precision-guided munitions sometimes missed their targets. Sophisticated air defense systems were bypassed by relatively simple drones. Encrypted communications networks proved vulnerable or were abandoned in favor of unsecure channels. This does not mean the technology was inherently useless, but it reveals that its effectiveness was often contingent on a complex ecosystem of support, training, and doctrine that was not as robust as assumed. How will the J-20's stealth capabilities hold up against a multi-layered, networked sensor grid actively employing a range of detection methods? How will a Type 055 destroyer's combat systems react when simultaneously targeted by a swarm of low-cost naval drones and anti-ship missiles? While modern surveillance makes blatant fabrications difficult, a more subtle form of Potemkin capability can persist when systems are rushed into service without thorough testing, when production quality is compromised, or when the underlying doctrine for their use is underdeveloped. If combat performance revealed the gap between theory and reality for Russia's weapons, its logistical operations exposed a fundamental systemic weakness. The initial phase of the 2022 invasion was defined by catastrophic logistical failures, a visual testament to poor planning, inadequate supply chain management, a critical underestimation of consumption rates for fuel, ammunition, rations. Vehicles ran out of fuel. Vehicles broke down with no recovery assets. They became easy targets for Ukrainian artillery and ambushes. This failure to sustain a rapid advance showed even a powerful military can be paralyzed by its inability to supply frontline forces. For China, a Taiwan contingency would be exponentially more complex. In contrast, an attack on Taiwan would be primarily amphibious and airborne across the 100-mile-wide Taiwan Strait. Every soldier, every vehicle, every bullet, every drop of fuel would need transport by sea or air. The PLA Navy and Air Force would need to establish and maintain sea and air bridges. Under constant threat from anti-ship missiles, sea mines, submarines, and swarms of drones. Lessons from the Black Sea. Ukrainian attacks attrited parts of the Russian fleet. Even a numerically superior navy isn't immune to asymmetric threats. If China can't secure its logistical lifeline across the strait, any beachhead could become isolated and unsustainable. Success depends less on fifth-generation fighters and more on unglamorous logistics. Sea lift capacity, port seizure and repair capabilities, underway replenishment, forward arming and refueling points, and the ability to protect vulnerable supply lines over time. The war in Ukraine has been the first large-scale drone war, showing how unmanned systems disrupt modern battlefields. Both sides deployed a staggering variety of drones: small quadcopters for reconnaissance, long-range attack drones, naval unmanned surface vessels. These systems proved incredibly effective. Persistent surveillance, precise artillery targeting, low-cost strikes on high-value assets. High-value assets, tanks. High-value assets, air defense systems. High-value assets, naval warships. FPV drones, cheap, expendable, changed the tactical landscape. Ukrainian FPV operators in trenches. Drone-saturated battlefields challenge conventional militaries, including the PLA. China is a world leader in drone manufacturing and military integration. The lesson isn't just having drones, it's defending against them. Air defenses built for jets and missiles can be overwhelmed by drone swarms. A Panzer S-1 can expend costly missiles defending against cheap drones. Missiles expended versus inexpensive drones. PLA assets under threat. Ground forces. PLA assets under threat. Naval vessels. PLA assets under threat. Air bases. In a Taiwan scenario, thousands of pre-positioned drones could be used to harass landing forces, hit logistics hubs, and attack command and control nodes. The PLA's Type 99 main battle tank. The PLA's Type 055 destroyer. Even heavily armored vehicles are vulnerable to top attack munitions delivered by small drones. Tactics must adapt. Armor and ships need layered defenses. Electronic warfare jammers, close-in weapon systems, physical cope cages appearing on vehicles at scale. China is developing laser weapons like the LY-1 and high-power microwave systems. There is no single silver bullet. Effective defense needs detection, radar, acoustic sensors, optical tracking, electronic warfare, jamming, spoofing, kinetic options, guns, missiles, interceptor drones. Defenses must be ubiquitous, mobile, and cost-effective. The PLA must rigorously test defenses against massed, low-cost drone threats so forces can survive and operate on a transparent battlefield. One of the most surprising outcomes of the initial phase of the war in Ukraine was Russia's failure to establish air superiority despite a numerically and technologically superior VKS. Ukraine's mobile air defense network remained resilient. Forces dispersed and frequently moved assets. S-300, Buk, Western-supplied systems, creating a layered, persistent threat. This denied Russian aircraft freedom over much of the country. Low-altitude sorties made them vulnerable to manpads or forced standoff launches, reducing effectiveness and accuracy. This lesson applies to the PLA and a cross-strait conflict. Taiwan has invested in a dense, integrated air defense network. Patriot missiles, Skybow Tian, Kung Sams, and shorter-range systems, with mountainous terrain aiding concealment. The PLA's plan would rely on J-20 stealth fighters to penetrate defenses and its vast missile arsenal to degrade them. Ukraine shows defenders can absorb an initial barrage and remain a credible threat. Stealth performance in such a contested environment remains a key question. Low-frequency radars are more capable of detecting stealth aircraft, and once a J-20 releases its weapons or is detected, it becomes vulnerable. The survival of Ukraine's air force shows a smaller, well-handled force can deny control of the skies. The PLAAF would face suppressing static sites and highly mobile defenses while bases are under threat. It necessitates greater emphasis on seed and dead, resilient standoff weapons, and acceptance of high attrition in opening days. The era of quick, permissive air superiority against a capable opponent may be over. The proliferation of mobile air defenses and use of drones means the sky will remain contested. For the PLA, this means planning for aircraft always at risk. The image of a Ukrainian SA-11 Gadfly Buk mobile surface-to-air missile system represents a mobile and lethal threat to aircraft. The naval dimension of the war in Ukraine has offered dramatic, consequential lessons, especially the vulnerability of large surface combatants operating in littoral environments. The sinking of the Russian flagship Moskva was a watershed event, struck by Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles. It proved even a small navy can project lethal maritime power and destroy a major warship. Russian ships in the Black Sea have been repeatedly targeted and damaged by anti-ship missiles, and increasingly by low-cost unmanned surface vessels, naval drones, pushing the fleet farther from the coast and reducing its operational impact. This should alarm the PLA Navy. The plan. In a Taiwan scenario, these vessels must operate in confined, contested waters, facing shore-launched missiles from concealed batteries, submarines, fast attack craft, and swarms of naval drones. Moskva shows that even layered air defenses can fail if sensors are distracted, crews are unprepared, or defenses are overwhelmed by a coordinated attack. Naval drones, pioneered by Ukraine, add a new danger: small, fast, semi-submersible vessels that evade ship radars and can carry large explosive charges, in port or underway. A swarm could devastate transport ships carrying troops and equipment, potentially derailing a landing operation before it even begins. Defending against dozens or hundreds at once remains an unsolved tactical problem. Carriers and destroyers aren't obsolete, but their operational concepts must evolve. Airborne early warning, electronic warfare, and dedicated counter-drone and counter-missile escorts. Plan must invest in testing defenses against these asymmetric threats. The sobering lesson: a multi-billion-dollar ship can be neutralized by a tiny, cheap weapon. Missiles, radars, the power of deception. Beyond shells and missiles, the war has been a relentless contest in the electromagnetic spectrum. Both sides have intensely engaged in electronic warfare, seeking to jam, deceive, and destroy the other's sensors and communications. This war within a war impacted precision-guided munitions, drones, and command and control. Russia deployed sophisticated EW to jam Ukrainian drones and disrupt GPS guidance of Western munitions like HIMARS rockets and Excalibur shells. Engineers updated software and tactics in a cycle of measure and countermeasure. Critical lesson for the PLA: it relies on a massive arsenal of precision-guided ballistic and cruise missiles. Their success depends on a kill chain: detection, identification, targeting, guidance, and every link is vulnerable to electronic attack. Adversaries could use powerful jammers to disrupt satellite navigation signals, GPS or Beidou, and deploy decoys that mimic radar signatures, wasting missiles on phantom ships or airbases. China's carrier-killer missiles like the DF-21D and DF-26 depend on a network of over-the-horizon radars, satellites, and drones to find and track a U.S. carrier, a network that would be a primary target for U.S. electronic and cyber warfare. Ukraine has shown ingenuity, using decoys, even wooden mock-ups of HIMARS, to bait strikes, adapting commercial tech and open-source intelligence to develop targeting solutions. The PLA must ensure missiles can find targets in a degraded EM environment. Robust anti-jamming technologies, inertial and terrain contour matching guidance, and rapid reprogramming of weapons. Corruption's toll on combat readiness. While visible failures dominate headlines, Ukraine exposed a deeper problem: systemic corruption. Vast budgets siphoned through corrupt schemes led to inadequate equipment, expired rations, poor quality body armor, poorly maintained vehicles. Sophisticated systems contained substandard components. Entire units existed only on paper, their funding embezzled. This resonates with China. President Xi Jinping's wide-ranging anti-corruption campaign has seen the downfall of hundreds of high-ranking officers, including former defense ministers and the leadership of the PLA rocket force. Allegations include embezzlement from advanced jet engine programs and promotions sold to the highest bidder, elevating loyalty over competence. As revealed by a 2023 U.S. intelligence assessment, corruption within the PLA is so pervasive that it has led to missiles being filled with water instead of rocket fuel and missile silos with lids that cannot function properly. A modern military involves millions of components and thousands of contracts, each a potential point of failure if integrity is compromised. Beyond hardware, Ukraine reaffirmed the decisive human element: quality of training, ability to adapt, and command philosophy. Empowered junior leaders and an effective NCO core enable rapid adaptation. Rigid, top-down command led to slow reaction and brittle plans. Ukraine's decentralized approach enhanced initiative and survivability. The PLA recognizes this, working to professionalize its NCO core and encourage more realistic training. But cultural change is slow, and political loyalty can still compete with initiative. Modern combat requires combined arms integration at the lowest levels: infantry, armor, artillery, drones, electronic warfare, practiced relentlessly under stress, uncertainty, and friction. The most advanced tank is useless without a well-trained crew, a competent commander, and the logistical support to keep it in the fight. The PLA's greatest hidden vulnerability may not be a technological gap, but the corrosive effect of corruption on material readiness and leadership quality. The war in Ukraine has acted as a global audit, providing a brutal but invaluable dataset for observers. For the People's Liberation Army, it is a real-world stress test of a military model with notable similarities to its own. The lessons are clear, technical, and apolitical, pointing to concrete imperatives any major power must address. First, confront the reality of an untested arsenal. Move beyond sterile demonstrations. Actively jam your own systems. Test against asymmetric threats like drone swarms, and create scenarios where plans fail and units must adapt. Second, elevate logistics to a central pillar. For a Taiwan contingency, invest in sea lift protection, contested logistics, and sustaining forces across hostile waters, with the logistical chain treated as the primary target. Third, build layered, ubiquitous, cost-effective defenses against low-cost drones and missiles, electronic warfare, kinetic systems, and directed energy, from the individual soldier to the fleet. Fourth, plan for contested skies and seas. Emphasize survivability, deception, and attrition over time, rather than expecting a swift knockout blow. Reevaluate the vulnerability of high-profile assets, carriers and destroyers, in dense, literal threat environments. Finally, fix the inside. Root out corruption, empower junior leaders, and institutionalize unforgivingly realistic combined arms training with decisions under extreme pressure. The task for China is to transition from an army that looks impressive to one that has proven it can withstand the crucible of modern, high-intensity warfare. The journey is arduous, but essential. If you value engineering-based defense analysis with neutral, evidence-driven reporting, subscribe to DefenseScope and enable notifications to stay informed.